I'm Dr. Akeranda Smith. I'm a life coach, professor, and a thought leader. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Ike, and go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and let's jump right in. So lately, I've been doing a series basically on self-worth, and can't go any higher than your parents' perceptions of you. And so a lot of times we perceive ourselves through the lens of our parents' limitations. So this week, I am talking about self-worth and self-reflection. And one of the things I know to be true is that if you don't have a parent who is courageous and vulnerable enough to reflect back to you their mere likeness of all the things that they wanted for their life and their mistakes that they made and things that you should be mindful of, you'll end up making mistakes that you really don't have to make. Adolescence is the most difficult time for a child. One of which is because you're trying to learn how to see yourself without all the noise of your peers and even your parents. But one of the things you need during that time are parents who are courageous enough and vulnerable enough to see you being curious about things and head it off. And even if they don't know what to tell you, they can be courageous enough to be an open door and allow you to work out those questions with the help of their vulnerability. Very important. But if you're a parent who has a backdrop of shame because you didn't have that, or you don't feel confident enough because you don't know what to say, what you'll do is you'll withhold information from your kid during a pivotal time in their life when they really need you. One thing I know for sure is that kids don't make mistakes because they're trying to piss you off. They actually make mistakes so that they can learn how to be confident with themselves and also learn what to do and what not to do. But sometimes, as a parent, it can be very difficult if you haven't worked out your own issues. And so my mom was a mom who hadn't worked out her own issues. So as adolescents, I began to disassociate. I talked to myself a lot. I had a huge imagination. And it's really how I got by in life, because for me, being an adolescent was really hard because I didn't have a mother or anyone at that time that I could look up to mirror back to me my potential, to mirror back to me all the things that I was feeling in my body and I couldn't quite make out. Even for the mere fact that I had started my period, my mom didn't explain to me anything that I should have known about that. But hey, you got your period now. This is what you're going to do. And that was it. It was no indoctrination into this really pivotal time of being a young girl entering into womanhood. My mom didn't talk to me about sex. She only told me not to get pregnant because if I did, that it was my child. It was very difficult to nonetheless during this time of adolescence. And it's interesting now because as a parent who has daughters, I know the importance of having an open door policy, because there's never a time in your life as a young woman where you don't have questions. And you need someone who, even if they don't know, to be courageous enough to say they don't know. So maybe that you can work these, questions and concerns out together. And so I was a sensitive child and I had a lot of time on my hands. And when a child is sensitive and have a lot of time on their hands, they can get into things that they shouldn't necessarily get into, but because they don't have a place to be curious and ask questions, you can make a lot of mistakes, and some can be costly. And so I was a sensitive child. Um, to this day, I'm very empathic, and I am also a HSP, a highly sensitive person. If you want to know more about that, comment below and I'll do a video on it. When your parents don't have imagination, we have to reimagine for them. And I was the kind of child who pushed boundaries. What I didn't understand, I needed to know. I'm still like that today. Never shall forget that when I was young, I used to spend my summers with my grandmother, and it was this family friend who was way older than me, who used to prey on little girls. I didn't know that at the time. The family knew, but no one really explained what that meant. So we exchanged numbers, and when I came back to the state that I live in, he was already living here. And I used to ride the bus as a kid, and riding a bus was never really cool. And so I used to see kids getting picked up by friends and by their boyfriends, and I was like, shoot, I want to get picked up too. Totally innocent, right? And so I had been in communication with this young man who was way older than me. FYI, if you're a young person, don't try this at home. Long story short, I reached out to him. He was like, "Oh, I'll come pick you up from school." He came to pick me up from school, took me home. Nothing happened, no kiss, no hugging, no touching. Just an innocent ride home, right? Thank goodness that a family member of mine told their father, which is my mom's brother, and he told my mom. And my mom was livid, and I was punished severely for it. My mom, she beat me unmercifully because of it. And if you ever have read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me, there's a part in there where he talks about his father and how parents of a certain generation sometimes were abusive. They wanted to beat you before the world beat you. It sounds kind of ironic, but it was a way for Black parents to protect their children from getting themselves into harm as adults. And so I knew at that moment, not at that moment, but as I got older and I look back, that was my mom's fear. It was her fear of not being to reflect back to me all the things that I was experiencing in adolescence and what I should be aware of. And I'm sure deep down on the inside, she was afraid that this could have gone severely worse. I mean, she made it clear when she was conveying her disdain about the incident. But for me as a child, it didn't really help me. It scared me. I never did it again, but it didn't tell me what I needed to know, right? Because I can attach that incident to so many others as I got older, and I can see how my self-worth took a hit even in that moment because I did something totally innocent, but at the back of my mind, I'm like, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I not worthy of being picked up from school? When really my mom was looking like, it's not that you're not worthy of being picked up from school. But I also knew that my mom was frustrated because she knew she had to work. She knew that she couldn't pick me up from school, although she felt like she couldn't get off from work. So a lot of her frustration in that moment, she was beating me for having to be a Black single mother and not have anyone to depend on. She was beating me for her own shame. She was beating me for the lack of confidence of being able to come to me and just say, well, what were you trying to achieve and why did you do that? She was beating for me for the fact that I didn't know how serious this was. She was beating me for the fact that she was scared that something could have happened to me on her watch. She would have blamed herself for it. She was beating me because being Black, I say this all the time, it is so complex. To somebody else, they may not understand this, but I understood it. Not at the moment, but as I got older, looking back, I'm like, she was afraid to reflect to me all these things that probably could have made they have a different outcome. And so when parents are ashamed to reflect back to you the lessons that you are learning and needing to learn, you make a lot of mistakes that you don't really need to make. So without parents' self-reflection, we all remain in denial. And so for a very long period of my life, I couldn't understand what the big deal was. And like I said, that caused me a lot of pain. And so I had to learn how to reflect back to myself, right, wrong, and indifferent. And I'm going to tell you, anytime you miss it from your parents and you got to learn it on your own, it's never as easy. But I was able to learn it. But it didn't mean that I didn't struggle because of my mom and my father not being around and my mom not reflecting to me her own truth about even the mistakes that she had made and her parents had made. So, as always, thank you for watching and drop in the comments your experiences with your parents and their relationship with self-worth and self-reflection. As always, see you next week, and thank you so much for watching.